Welcome to the Lucas Miles Show. I'm your host, Lucas Miles. Welcome to the Lucas Miles Show. I'm your host, Lucas Miles, and we are back with another incredible episode. Today, my guest, Brian Bird, is with us. He's the executive producer and co-creator of the Hallmark Channel original series, When Calls the Heart. And this guy's got over 3 decades of experience in Hollywood, a ton of knowledge to share. He's written and produced 24 films, including one of my favorites, The Case for Christ, as well as films like Captive and Not Easily Broken. He also has credits on more than 250 episodes of television shows beyond When Calls the Heart, shows like Touched by an Angel, Step by Step, and Evening Shade. Brian is he's just one of the coolest guys in Hollywood. He loves the Lord. He's got just so much wisdom to share, and he's here with us on this episode. It's going to be incredible. Stick around. But before we get to Brian, I want to tell you a little bit about our sponsor today, and that is Cove. Cove is a home security system that is just revolutionizing the market. These guys are incredible. It was an easy decision for me to team up with them. I utilize Cove at my home. My home is protected by Cove. And, home security is something that I take very seriously. We've had a couple times before having the Cove system where we had some scares at our house that were security related. And so, for me, having a home security system in today's day and age is just something that it's not even a choice anymore. The choice is just which system are you going to go with. And from what I've seen in the systems I looked at, Cove is one that it's easy to use, it's affordable, it's high tech, it's foolproof, and that's why I've chosen it to protect my family and my belongings. I would tell anybody if they're going to look at a home security system, it's not just about having motion sensors or something like that. These old school systems that people have in their house, who cares if you have a motion sensor if somebody is already in your home that's already too late for security? And so what Cove really does is it helps alert you before you have a problem. And so, I have my cameras set up in such a way that I can see my front door, I can see my back door in my backyard, I can see the entryways to my house. I have, sensors on all of my windows to let me know. And all through this high-tech console, you can talk directly to them. They're always just a button away from being available to help you, whether it's a medical emergency or a security situation. And this is also just practical for me here recently. I thought I left the stove on, and I was able to pull up my Cove app and flip through my cameras, and I could actually see the stove from one of the cameras and make sure that it was in fact off. And you can even zoom in on it. It's incredible. I love it. You can go over to covesmart.com in order to order your own system. They ship these things out super quick. I was shocked by how fast I got it. And you can go to covesmart.com. And if you use the promo code Lucas, only for listeners of this show, you will get 20% off of your system as well as a free indoor security camera. It's a great deal. Check it out. Thanks to Cove for sponsoring this episode of the Lucas Miles Show. And here is our guest, Mr. Brian Bird. Welcome to the Lucas Miles Show. I'm your host, Lucas Miles, and I am here with one of my favorite guests at NRB every year, Brian Bird, producer, writer, entertainment extraordinaire, and an all-around really nice guy. Brian, thanks for being on the show.
Lucas, always love being with you, man.
I like the way your mind works. I just think that you have, and I feel like I'm an idea guy, but I feel like I'm a frantic idea guy where I'm always just moving and hustling and running about. You're doing, I feel like, 3 times as much stuff as I am, but when I see you, you're just like calmly strolling through, like there just is a piece on you, and so I love that. Where's that come from?
It comes from being worn out, just walking slow. Like yeah, exactly. I'm a brain in a jar now. That's about all that's left of me.
You have obviously some projects that are out. People know about things. I know we've talked before about When Calls the Heart, which I want to go into that here in a little bit. And I've told you this before. I've said this on past episodes. I think you're one of the best filmmakers in the faith media space. And I was just such a huge fan of The Case for Christ. And I know you have a new film, The Case for Miracles, which is it fair to say that's a follow-up to The Case for Christ?
It is. So Lee Strobel, has written, a dozen books, I think, sort of in the Case for, franchise, if you can, or series of books. And The Case for Christ was his first, and that's the one we turned into a movie a couple of years ago. And was so proud of it, honestly. I told Lee, I said, if nothing ever came of anything more for me in my career, I would feel like, okay, well, you hit some marks there, and you could retire happy at that point. But The Case for Miracles is Lee's newest book, and it's the same sort of format as A Case for Christ, where a journalist investigates the supernatural occurrences in the universe and on this planet, and he sort of documents some of the most well-known miracles that people have heard about in the press here, on planet Earth recently. But then he digs more deeply into sort of the theology behind miracles, but also the historicity of miracles through in the church through the ages.
Yeah.
And so the story sort of picks up 25 years after The Case for Christ, when Lee was hosting his television show, Faith Under Fire. He dealt with on the show, everything from atheists to scientists to Muslim imams, right? Yeah. And talking about the differences between, the faiths around the world. And so Faith Under Fire sort of becomes, like in the Case for Christ, it was the Chicago Tribune was our backdrop for that, for that movie and that story. This one picks up with him beginning to investigate miracles. But it goes much more personally into his life because he witnessed his own miracle in his own life.
Wow.
And it was something he never could have expected. It was something he prayed for years and thought it was never going to happen, and it finally did. And so it sort of tracks he and Leslie's story 25 years later as they're needing desperately a miracle in their life, and miracles comes up all the time on his TV show. And so that's sort of how it's all framed.
New actors playing them and everything else.
We're not sure about that yet. I mean, the script is still in process.
I'm available if you need me.
Okay, there you go. You could be Lee Strobel's son.
Right, yeah,
Kyle.
25 years later, he'd be a little older than he was.
Yeah.
So this is going to go into production this year. Is that the expectation?
Probably not quite this year because we're sort of slowly gestating the script.
Yep.
And it's the project.
Because you're smart. People rush that stuff.
You do. Honestly, every project that I've ever had made, it's a rarity for you to work on it and write it in the same year that it goes into production. Yeah. That did happen with Case for Christ, but never had another one that has done that before.
Right.
And I just find that the more time and attention you can put on the blueprints for the building, the less likely it is to fall down on you when you're building it. So
that's probably important in this business. If only we all learned that,
Right.
Brian, let's talk a little bit about When Calls the Heart,
Yeah.
which, I mean, this has been a movement. I just told somebody today, of all the people I've interviewed, my mom is most impressed that I've interviewed Brian Bird. And so Hardee's is this community that's developed around the world of people that are uber fans of the show and regular supporters of it. This is on the Hallmark channel, and you guys have you've had tremendous success over the last few years, and you've recently faced some challenges and some ups and downs with the maybe because of some things in the news that have happened.
Right.
Can you talk to us about that at all?
Yeah, this show, I haven't really told you the whole story of When Calls the Heart and how it got born. but it was born out of crisis. So we have faced challenges going all the way back to 2008 with, the inception of how to get this show on the air. And so we're kind of used to tough stuff, right? We in season 5, we had this apocalyptic moment on the show where the beloved Mountie Jack, needed to be written out of the show. And so the way we did that was to kill the character. And it caused an earthquake across Hardyville,
Yes.
And
I still hear about that at family dinners sometimes.
Yeah, it was a hard one to get over for the fans because he was such a beloved character. The reality is, when you're making a TV show, your fans love the world you've built so much, and they want to be part of that world, and they embrace that world. But it's still a business, right? The making of any kind of media product is a business, and it has it's filled with people that have free will, right? And so in that case, with my good friend Dan Lissing, who played Mountie Jack on the show for 5 seasons, he was ready to move on in his own acting life, right? He had
She has a right to do, right? I mean, he's
totally
a human with a plan, and
right. When you sign up for a show, you sign a contract, and then when your contract's up, you have the choice to move on if you want to.
Yeah.
And so he chose to move on. It was a hard parting for the Hardys for him to do that. But we knew in that case that the only way for that character to leave the world was to leave the world because he was so beloved. The relationship that he had with Elizabeth Thatcher was just this epic romance that everybody, swooned over, and rightfully so, because the actors did such a great job of portraying that relationship.
The integrity of that character wouldn't have just left or ran off.
That's exactly right. He wouldn't have said, "Oh, my duty is more important than my love for Elizabeth."
Yeah.
Or we went through all the
all
options.
the scenarios.
Yeah. And if he had fallen in love with somebody else, any of the other options besides Mountie Jack having to leave the town in a box, the fans would have hated.
The whole, they'd say in screenwriting or in any really creative process, they have the phrase of sometimes you have to kill the baby.
Yes.
And that this is like a real life example. Like you literally had to axe this character for the sake of the integrity of the program, which to me that's good storytelling.
Yes.
Because I think we've all seen programs where somebody makes a creative decision, you're going, that's not what that character would have done, and they're just trying to come up with a quick solution or a quick fix to a problem that they have, and in the behind the scenes of the show. And I like that about you. Again, I think that goes back to, I think that you're really smart with how you approach this. Your team has done a wonderful job.
Well, you're always thinking about the fans, because the Hardys love the show, and we love the Hardys. I mean, without them, I don't think there really is a show, honestly. I mean, you in today's day and age, when there's 500 television shows on the air, and soon to be 1,000, honestly, with all the streaming services and so forth, it's hard to get on people's radar screens. There's a million messages competing for their attention. And so to get on the radar screen with your product, your content, is really hard. And so when you have a fan group, a grassroots fan group that supports the show, that comes around the show, they are the marketing department for you, right? And you want to serve them. You want to do right by them. And so we have always tried to do right by our fans. Sometimes they don't like it. We know it's right for them, and they don't necessarily always agree with that. But the proof is in the pudding, the ratings.
Right. Yes.
Right. The numbers from season 5, when we had to kill Mountie Jack, to season 6 were up 20%.
Oh wow.
So either the people that said they didn't like it anymore were replaced, or they all came home. And I sort of think it's probably mostly that. Our recent issue, which has just been in the news, within the last several weeks, is, our beloved Abigail Stanton, played by Lori Loughlin, found herself in a pinch with the justice system, and we have no idea the full story there. We know that justice, sort of has to run its course on this. So we have not rushed to judgment. We love Lori. She's a friend. She's been a fantastic member of our team. But it was necessary, because we don't know what her future looks like, for us to have to go on a creative hiatus with season 6, the rest of season 6 that had not yet aired, and do some retooling in those episodes, because we don't know what Lori's future looks like at this point. We pray for the best for her. We love her. Hope Valley's all about second chances, and so we're hoping for second chances all the way around. But we're retooling the rest of season 6, and the Hardys have been concerned that this meant the end of the show. Absolutely does not mean the end of the show. In fact, it's not canceled. They're going to get to see the rest of those episodes. It's just going to be a little bit of a waiting period for them to get those, but we're hot on the trail of doing that, and feel good about it. What we're coming up with on the retooling of those shows, and we're excited to be able to present it to the Hardys. So the show's not going anywhere. The Hardys are not going anywhere.
Well, it's certainly in good hands with you, Brian, and I think that I think that there's a lot of times where as producers, and it doesn't matter if you're a producer or you're a CEO of a company, or you might have some of this stuff might be more public in your world, some of these decisions that you have to make, and but there's any business leader, any thought leader, any person that's in any position of leadership, a pastor, etc. There's outside factors in our lives all the time that cause us to kind of go back to the table with our team, or come back to the Lord and say, okay, how do we rekey this for the future and moving forward to make sure that we have the best solution for everybody involved. And I think that if there's somebody that's going to do a good job at that, I'm confident it's going to be you.
Well, we just keep stepping forward in faith on this show. We always have. We approach it very humbly. This show is God's show. We just offer all of our work up to Him, and we just sort of let Him sort out the rest of it. And so far that has worked successfully for us, just to maintain sort of that humble attitude about it. But we know that it's an important show in the marketplace. I mean, we know what we've seen from the fans. We know enough to know that it's important. And the fact that there's not really any other kind of programming like this out there. Really, the Hallmark Channel's sort of the lone place where you see anything that a family and faith and so forth. You survey the rest of the TV spectrum, and it's sadly zombies, vampires, werewolves, dead bodies, cynicism, and I'm not going to say that there's not great programming, beautifully made programming among all that. But what it's missing is hope. And that's what our show is all about. And the town is even called Hope Valley, right? So we know that it's special in the marketplace just because it's different than what everybody else is doing. And, really the math about this show is pretty simple to understand. You find a underserved audience out there. Picture an island full of starving people, and you arrive with a ship full of food. They're just going to love you. They're going to love on you. They're going to love the show. They're going to be your fans. They're going to be your friends. That's all this is. There are starving people. They're hungry for soul food. We're giving them soul food when nobody else is, and that's our MO on this, and we'll continue to do that as long as they keep showing up. And the show has had double-digit growth year after year, and I believe it's reaching a tipping point. What they call a tipping point, where it's you don't look back from that. At some point, the show will end. We don't know when that is, but the legacy is left, in my opinion, is more important than the show. I mean, I love the show. I'm proud of the show. But the legacy of the Hardys and their community, there are 3.5 million people that watch the show every week. We've been able to count about 500,000 of them who would self-identify as Hardys across the social media platforms. And for those 500,000 people, they love each other, they pray for each other, they have parties, Hardys parties, they have meals together, they watch the show together, they tweet together, they teach each other to tweet, right? It's a dream from the standpoint of marketing something.
Yeah.
But again, the legacy to me is them, right? The fact that they're out there and that all these friendships and this sense of community has been created. That'll far outlive the importance of the show, in my opinion. So
I think spoken like a true creator, and I think that I just love the mindset. I think that's if I could take what you just said and unpack that to every young filmmaker that goes, I got this idea to do something, because what you're delivering here, I think, is a recipe for running the marathon of the creative life rather than just the sprint of the creative life.
Yes.
Brian, we just got a couple more minutes here, but any other projects you have kind of in the can or maybe coming up here that you want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, there's 3 movies that I've written in the last year. Somehow, some way, put all these things together. And the first one is called Northern Lights, and I'm really excited about this one. This one is a true story about, picture this, a football field at the top of the world where there is no grass, where nothing grows because it's the Arctic tundra, where you have to post snipers on the football field to ward off the polar bears, and a ragtag bunch of Inupiat Eskimo, another name for them, football players playing on gravel, and because they can't get grass to grow up there, and playing on 100 yards from the Arctic Ocean, where the northern lights come and where there's only 2 months of sunshine every year, and 2 football moms, one from Florida and one from right there in Barrow, Alaska, who is Inupiat herself, who get together and decide to bring a football field to Barrow, Alaska for that team. And it's called Northern Lights because these 2 ladies are Northern Lights for all of us. And they were able to get an artificial turf field built 100 yards from the Arctic Ocean.
Is this based on a true story?
This is a true story.
Wow.
And we found it we saw it on ESPN first. And it's now been turned into a book.
Okay.
By one of those football moms, Kathy Parker, who's here at NRB, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Kathy's a Christian Christian lady who put her faith into action and conquered and did the impossible. Everybody said it's impossible. There's no roads there. You can go in by barge or by airplane, except for when the ocean is frozen over, 6 months out of the year.
I thought Indiana was cold.
Oh my goodness. And these boys were dropping out of school. 50% of them were dropping out of high school before football.
Wow.
Last year, 100% of them graduated.
Wow.
They won the state championship of Alaska, this football team. And They were nothing but the bad news bears prior to these moms deciding to change their world.
Love it.
And when you commit those acts of faith, when those acts of kindness, those random acts of kindness, you change the world. Moms are superheroes. They can fix everything if we just let them.
That's probably a good point to end this at. Brian, thank you so much for your time being on here. And just to our listeners and our audience watching, check out When Calls the Heart. Check out The Case for Miracles. Follow that. If you haven't seen The Case for Christ, go grab it on DVD or from your favorite streaming platform. Is that on Netflix right now? Or what?
It is.
Okay,
Case for Christ
that's
on
what
Netflix,
I was thinking. Yeah, wonderful movie night for the family there. And or if you're by yourself, grab some popcorn and check that out. And then let's watch for Northern Lights. Any idea on when we can expect that?
We are hoping to have that movie rolling cameras this summer. It's getting tight. There's only 2 months a year up there where you can film. So
wow, are you going to the field to film it there?
We are.
Unbelievable, love it. Awesome. So, Brian Bird, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks,
Lucas
buddy.
Miles Show. It's always a pleasure having you here. Can't wait to have you back.
Awesome. Thanks, man.